So I've had this push stick for a while, and I originally made just this part, and that worked pretty well. And then I thought it'd be a good idea to lengthen the sort of the reach on it. So I attached this piece, and then it kind of got back to looking like a handsaw, which is I think what I used to make the handle from. And it works really well, but it's a little wide because I just attached the two pieces together. And I thought it'd be nice to remake this where the blade section is held within the handle section, kind of like a real saw. And maybe take it a step further and make it actually look like a saw. So that's what I'm going to do. I have a couple of stacks of maple that I cut up, sort of small slabs that I think I made from chunks that I was going to turn into bowls, but sort of felt like I've turned enough bowls, so I slabbed up some of these. And so I have these little pieces of maple. So I jointed one of those, got two faces flat, and planed it down to about an inch. I think just a little bit more than an inch. And I made one end straight, which would help in holding it down to the CNC table. So once I had a piece of wood ready, I needed to make a pattern to cut. So I took a little saw that I have that I like the handle on, and I scanned that into the computer. I just laid the saw down on the scanning bed and just scanned it, and it worked pretty well. Then I traced the outline and the hole for your hand and the 3 screws, and I had something that I could use to cut on the CNC machine. I decided not to cut the holes for the screws at this point, and I would do that later on the drill press. So I got the piece cut out, but it didn't look right, and I realized I had cut on the wrong side of the lines. So the router was on the inside of the outside shape and on the outside of the inside shape, the hand grip part. So I found another piece of maple, and I jointed that, and I planed it down to just a little more than an inch, and I cut off the end to make it straight, to work better with the hold down on the CNC, and I recut it, and I made sure I did it right this time. And it seemed to be about right. I cleaned up the handle, so I sanded the faces on the disc sander, and I went around the outside with the spindle sander. And it was pretty good right out of the machine, but there were a couple patches that needed a little work. Then I cut the saw blade from a piece of 1/4-inch plywood, and it worked the first time. Now I need to cut a slot into the handle to take the blade section. So I drew a line where I wanted the bottom of the blade to sit in the handle. And I set up the handle on my tenon jig, and I made that line that I drew parallel to the table so that it would be the top of the saw blade. Then I can just run the handle through the saw, and that seemed to work pretty well. It's not a really tight fit, but that's okay. I'm gonna put some bolts in. So I drilled the holes for the bolts on the drill press, and I first drilled the hole for the bolt, then I drilled out a space for the head of the bolt and for the nut on the bolt on the other side. Then I could put the blade in and drill the hole again, and the holes that are in the blade will be in the same place as they are in the handle. Then I rounded over all the edges on the handle, and I used a small round over bit for this, maybe a 1/4 inch, I'm not exactly sure. Then I went over the parts of the handle that you touch with your hand with a bigger round over bit, so there'd be a bigger radius there. And a little sanding. It worked okay with the electric sander, but then I did some hand sanding. This seemed to work a little better for some stuff. Then I can put the two together and bolt them together, and everything went together just fine. And it's a push stick saw. And it seems to work fairly well. It's a little bit tall and it feels different, but I think I'll get used to that. It's kind of nice because it keeps my hand up and away from the blade. Being so thin, it doesn't hit my off switch on the table saw very well. Maybe a little piece of rubber at the end. Thanks for watching.